Hello and welcome to my podcast. My name is Melissa Snow, and today I'm going to be talking about the Villisca X murder house. So it says at 7 a.m. the next day, June 10th, Mary Pickman and the Moore's neighbor became concerned after she noticed that the family had not come out of their morning chores. Pickman knocked on the Moore's door. When nobody answered, she tried to open the door and discovered that it was locked. Pickman let the Moore's chickens out and called Ross Moore, Josiah's brother. Like Pickman, Moore received no response, and he knocked on the door and shouted. Ross unlocked the front door with his copy of the key to the house. While Pickman stood in the porch, Ross went into the parlor and opened the guest bedroom door, where he found Ina and Lena Sterling's bodies on the bed. Moore immediately told Pickman to call Henry Hank Horton, Villisca primary peace officer, who arrived shortly. Therefore, Horton searched of the house revealed that the entire Moore family and two Stillinger sisters had gone bludgeoned to death. And the Stillinger sisters had been bludgeoned to death. The murder weapon was an axe belonging to Josiah, was found in the guest room where the Sterlington sisters were found. Doctors concluded that the murders had taken place between midnight and 5 a.m. Two spent cigarettes in the attic suggest that the killer or killers patiently waited. According to the official tour, there are no cigarettes found in the attic until Moore's family and Stillinger guest was asleep. The killer began to The killers begin in the master bedroom, where Josiah and Sarah Moore were sleeping. Josiah received more blows from the axe than any of the other victims. His face had been cut in such an extent that his eyes were missing. The killers began in the master bedroom, where Josiah and Sarah Moore were sleeping. Josiah received more blows from the axe than any of the victims' face had been cut to such an extent and his eyes were missing. The ceilings in the room also had a gouge mark from when the murderers lifted the axe to murder him. The killer or killers used the blade of the axe on Sarah while using the blunt end on the rest of the victims. Man, that's crazy. Herman, Mary, Kathleen, Arthur, and Paul were next bludgeoned in the head in the same manner as the parents. After the murders, returned to the master bedroom to inflict more blows on the elder Moores, knocking over a shoe that had filled with blood before moving downstairs to the guest room and killing Lena and Ina. Seemingly afterwards, a 4-pound slab of bacon was taken out of the ice box and laid next to the axe. Investigations was also found untouched food in the bloody water during the search. After the search, the people were let in to see if they could have committed the crime, committed the crime. After the search, people were let in to see if they can have committed the crime, completely containing the weapon. Investigators believed that all the victims except Lena Stillinger had asleep when murdered. They thought that they were awakened and tried to fight back as she was found lying crosswise on the bed and with a defense wound on her arm. Lena's nightgown was pushed up to her waist and she was wearing undergarments, leading to law enforcement speculations that the killers, her or attempted to do so, and was later proven false. Over time, many possible suspects emerged, including Reverend George Kelly, Frank F. Jones, William Mansfield, Loving Mitchell, Paul Miller, and Henry Lee Moore. No relation. Kelly was tried twice for the murders, and the first trial ended up in a huge jury, while the second ended up in an acquittal. Other suspects in the investigation were exonerated. Andrew Sawyer. Every testament and otherwise, every transit and otherwise unaccounted for stranger was suspected of the murders. Andrew Sawyer was one of those people who was interrogated but not charged. He also was obsessed with the murders and slept fully clothed as if it was ready to make a clean getaway. He also slept with an axe by his bed. Reverend George Kelly. Kelly was English-born travel minister in town. On the night of the murders, Kelly was described as a particular, reportedly having suffered a mental breakdown as an adolescent. As an adult, he was accused of peeping in several times, asking young women and girls to pose nude for him. On June 8, 1912, he came to Villisca to teach at the Children's Day services when the Moore family attended on June 9, 1912. He left town between 5 a.m. and 5 a.m. Isn't that the same thing? On June 10th of 1912, hours before the bodies were discovered, Reverend Kelly had confessed to murdering in court, but the jury did not believe his confession. In the week that followed, his display a fascination with the case and wrote many letters to the police, investigators, and family and deceased. The absorbed suspicion, and the private investigator wrote back to Reverend Kelly, also for the details of the minister might know about the murder. Kelly replied with great detail, claiming to have heard a sound and possibly witnessed the murders. His known mental illness made authorities question whether he knew the details because of having committed the murders or imagined his account. In 1914, 2 years after the murders, Kelly was arrested for the second obscene mental through In 1914, 2 years after the murders, Kelly was arrested for sending obscene material through the mail. He was sexually harassing a woman who appealed for a job at his secretary. He was sent to St. Elizabeth's Hospital, the National Mental Hospital in Washington, D.C. Investigators speculated against that Kelly could be the murderer of the Moore family. In 1917, Kelly was arrested for the Villisca murders. Police obtained a confession from him. However, it followed many hours of interrogations. Following many hours of the interrogations, Kelly later recurred 2 separate trials and he was acquitted. Man, there's a lot of people that were acquitted. Frank Fernando Jones was a Villisca resident, and Ohio State Senator Josiah Moore had worked for Frank Jones at his implement store for many years before leaving to open his own store. Moore reportedly took business away from Jones, including very successful John Deere dealership. Moore was rumored to have had a sexual affair with Jones' daughter-in-law through the evidence in supporting this. Williams Mansfield. Another that the Senator Jones hired Williams Insane Blackie Mansfield, an ex-convict of the U.S. Army soldier stationed in Fort Leavenworth, to murder the Moore family. 9 months before the murder at Villisca, a similar case of an axe murder occurred in Colorado Springs, Colorado. 2 axe murders cases followed in Ellensworth, Kansas, and Paola, Kansas. The cases were similar enough to raise the possibility of having been committed by the same person. Other murders reported as possibly being linked to these crimes, including the memorious unsolved axe murders along the Southern Pacific Railroad from 1911 and 1912. The unsolved axe man of the New Orleans killings was well served as such as a murder during the time of the period. The murder in Colorado Springs were closely related to extinction to those to the Moore house. H.G. Wayne, his wife and children, Miss A.J. Burham, were found dead, murdered with an axe. Bed sheets were used to cover the windows and prevent possibly from blocking in the Moore's house. The Moore's house, the murder hung aprons and skirts and covered the windows, as the murder in the Villisca and the murder of Colorado Springs wiped the blood off his axe, covered the heads of the victims and the clothes. Mansfield was also the prime suspect of the Burns Detective Agency of Kansas City and Detective James Networth Wilkerson, who suggested that the cocaine addict serial killer, according to the contemporary news reports. Wilkerson Mansfield was responsible for the axe murders of his wife, infant child, father-in-law, and mother-in-law in Blue Island, Illinois, on July 5th, 1914, 2 years after the Villisca murder house. The axe murders committed in Polo, Kansas, 4 days before the Villisca murders, and the murder of Jenny Peterson and Jenny Miller of Aurora, Illinois. According to Wilkerson's investigation, all of the murders were committed by a precisely the same manner, indicating that the same man probably committed them. Wilkerson stated that he could prove the Mansfield was present in each of the different crime scenes on the night of the murders. In each murder, the victims were hacked to death with an axe, and the mirrors in the homes were covered. A burning lamp with a chimney off was left at the foot of the bed, and the basin of which the murder washed and found in the kitchen. In each case, the murderer avoided leaving fingerprints by wearing gloves, in which Wilkerson believed that was strong evidence the man was Mansfield, who knew his fingerprints were on file in a federal military prison in Leavenworth. Wilkerson managed to convince the jury to open an investigation in 1916, and Mansfield was arrested and brought to Montgomery County from Kansas City payroll records, however, provided in a bill that placed Maysville, Illinois at the same time as the Villisca murders. He was released for the lack of evidence. Later won a lawsuit he brought against Wilkerson and was awarded $2,225. Wilkerson believed that pressure from Jones results not only Maysville released, but also, however, R.H. Thrope, the restaurant owner from Shenandoah, Iowa, Claire Adia, the man said he had walked from Villisca. If proved to be true, the testimony would disprove Maysville B. Furthermore, and was reported for Mrs. Vinia and Thompson in Marshalltown. Was on her way to testify, and she heard 3 men in the woods plotting to murder the Moore family a short time before the killings. One of them, Henry Lee Moore, was a suspected serial killer who was not related to the slain Moore family, who was convicted of the murder of his mother and grandmother several months after the murders in Villisca. His weapon of choice was being an axe. Before and after the murders in Villisca, the very similar axe murder of the mother and the grandmother were committed, and all the case showed strikingly similar, leading to the strong suspicion that some of the crimes were committed by the axe murdering serial killer. And just like Blackie Mansfield, the axe murderer Henry Moore can also be considered a suspect in some of these slayings. It says another one, it says Samuel R. J. Moyer was, he was a suspect. And then another one says Paul Mueller was a suspect. And then it says another one was a suspect, but I don't know what his name was because it doesn't show it on here. 1 second. And they did make a movie on this. It's called The Axe Murder of Villisca. Says is a ghost story based on the house where it says they did make a movie on this. It's called The Axe Murder of Villisca. It is a ghost story based on the house where the notorious, still unsolved 1912 axe murder took place. 3 outcast teenagers break into the house in search of an answer, but discover something far beyond their worst fears. Says, what does the name Villisca mean? Pretty place. Villisca founders thought they were naming the Native American word for pretty place, when in reality it meant evil spirit. The stories behind the names listed here have been drawn from Tom Savage's excellent A Dictionary of Ohio Place, named University of Ohio Press 2007, unless otherwise cited in September 2019. So they think they solved the murder, but then again, they don't think they solved the murder. A lot of investigators, like ghost paranormal investigators, go in and still try to figure out what happened to these guys in this house, and it's a mystery to this day. So that was my story on the Villisca Axe murder house. I'm sure there's more, and one day hopefully I'll be able to go investigate it. We'll never know. I could always fly there, you never know. But I will be doing my podcast still, and I will still be here for you guys. I just took a break, so I just want to let you know that I have a lot more videos coming out. I still have an investigation of a couple of places to go to. I still will be going to several different graveyards and be live and recording. And let me know what you guys want me to do. Do you want me to sit down and we can talk about stuff and we can have a conversation about certain places, or what do you want to do? But until next time, I want to tell everybody thank you for enjoying my story time, and I will see you guys next time. Thanks everybody. Peace out everyone. Bye.